Luke Glanton is a locally famous motorcycle stunt performer whose work involves traveling with the carnival from town to town. One day during a fair in New York, Luke gets a visit from his ex-lover, Romina. He later drops her off at her house and suggests they meet up later and talk, as he will be out of town for work until the next year. Romina rejects Luke's request and explains that she is already seeing someone new. Sometime later, Luke finds out that he is the father of Romina's infant son, Jason. However, Romina does not want him in the child's life, as she is now in a relationship with Kofi and believes Luke is incapable of providing enough for his son. After careful consideration, Luke decides to quit his job as a motorcycle stunt performer to be more involved in his son's life. Luke gets a part-time job at an auto repair shop, intending to earn money to provide for his son, making only minimum wage. Luke asks his boss Robin for more money to care for his son, but Robin explains that he does not have much. However, Robin reveals that he used to be a bank robber and successfully managed to rob banks 4 times without ever getting caught. Noticing Luke's talent and ambition, Robin offers to partner with Luke to rob several banks in the area in return for good money, more than enough to take care of his son. Initially, Luke refuses, but eventually agrees out of desperation to provide for his infant son, Jason. One day, as planned, Luke storms into a bank and at gunpoint successfully steals a large sum of money and escapes on his motorbike. He rides a couple of blocks into Robin's truck, which they use as the getaway vehicle. The two later happily celebrate a successful heist. Luke uses the money to win Romina's trust back, proving to her that he is able to provide for her, along with their son Jason. The two share an intimate moment and spend time together in Luke's caravan while Luke gets to know Jason. The three continue to hang out often as Luke bonds with his son along with Romina. Meanwhile, Luke secretly proceeds with his life of crime, robbing multiple banks, and manages to escape successfully with Robin's help. One day, Luke visits Romina and Jason at Kofi's house and brings along some gifts for them, including a crib for Jason. Upon failing to find Romina and Kofi at home, he lets himself in the house and attempts to assemble the crib for Jason. The couple gets home a few minutes later, and Kofi demands Luke to leave the house. Kofi attempts to force him out, and Luke eventually strikes him on his head with a pair of pliers. The violent incident leads to Luke's arrest for assault, but Robin eventually manages to bail him out of jail. As soon as Luke is out, he tells Robin that he wants to resume their bank robberies and this time rob 2 banks in one day to get more money. Robin objects, not wanting to do any more robberies and press their luck, putting them at a greater risk of getting caught. The two disagree and fall out. When Luke refuses to back down, Robin resolves to completely dismantling Luke's motorbike to prevent him from proceeding with any more bank robberies. Upon finding his motorbike damaged beyond repair, Luke demands for money from Robin at gunpoint and proceeds to buy himself a new bike. Eventually, Luke resumes to bank robbery, and this time without Robin's help. He manages to steal some money from a bank and, as usual, uses his motorbike to escape. The police begin pursuing Luke, determined to catch up with him, but things go wrong for Luke when his new motorbike fails him. The motorbike initially fails to start and later crashes into a wall, slowing him down. A couple of minutes later into the chase, the motorbike eventually crashes, and Luke is forced to seek refuge in a stranger's home nearby. Police officer Avery Cross spots Luke rushing inside the house and proceeds to follow him, armed with a gun. Meanwhile, with nowhere to escape, Luke senses defeat and locks himself upstairs. He proceeds to phone Romina and explains his situation and then requests her not to tell their son Jason about him. Just before he hangs up, Officer Avery storms in and fires the first shot, shooting Luke in the stomach. Luke fires back and hits Avery in the leg before he falls out the window from the 2nd floor. Avery looks out the window and finds Luke heavily bleeding from his head, dead on the pavement. The scene transitions to Officer Avery waking up in a hospital and finds his wife Jennifer and infant son AJ along with his dad. Avery Cross is initially an ambitious rookie police officer. However, he becomes a local hero after taking down notorious bank robber Luke Glanton. Sometime later, an investigator visits Officer Avery in the hospital for questioning. Avery hides the fact that he fired the first shot and instead tells the police that Luke shot him first. Eventually, Avery is discharged and goes home to recover, but starts feeling remorseful for shooting Luke, especially when he discovers that Luke left an infant son behind. As Avery continues to recover, a group of officers in his department visit him at his house unannounced. They later have dinner, along with Avery's wife Jennifer. Avery appears uncomfortable with the visit. Meanwhile, their conversation becomes strained as the officers discuss about various matters unfolding within the police department. A tense atmosphere becomes clear at the dinner table as Jennifer grows uncomfortable and frustrated with the office's remarks. Officer DeLuca and Scotty request Jennifer to allow Avery to accompany them for a small and quick police task. Jennifer attempts to argue that Avery is off duty and needs some time to recover, but the determined officers eventually convince Jennifer, and she reluctantly agrees. Avery joins the group of officers, and they drive to Romina's home. Upon getting to the house, the officers find Romina and her family. Officer DeLuca demands to search for evidence and claims that Luke left behind some money, and he probably may have hidden it inside their house. Left with no other choice, the couple allow the officers inside their home, and they proceed to look around the house while questioning Romina about the money. Meanwhile, Avery appears to disagree with the officers, as he finds the search unusual, and no one informed him about it earlier. A few minutes later, Scotty finds a large sum of money wrapped up and hidden underneath the baby's crib, and proceeds to take the money. It is gradually revealed that Avery works under a corrupt police department. After unlawfully seizing the robbed money from Romina's home, the officers decide to split the money equally among themselves, and Avery gets a bigger share because he is termed as the hero. Upon getting home, Avery hides the money away in the garage, as Jennifer secretly watches from the house. Sometime later, Avery is celebrated and awarded for his heroic act of taking down a notorious criminal. He eventually recovers from his injury and reports back to work through the chief of police. Ambitious Officer Avery requests the chief to consider him for a different position and reassign him the role of a lieutenant in charge of special investigations, as his level of education makes him competent for the role. The chief declines Avery's request and proceeds to explain to him that although he is a great cop and a hero, he still needs to work his way up. Considering Avery's recovery, the chief decides to assign him to a less physically demanding role. From his previous active duty as a patrol officer, Avery is assigned to a desk job within the police department. One day, Avery and Scotty are discussing in a restaurant. Scotty proposes a plan to Avery involving a large quantity of cocaine that he and DeLuca are planning to steal and sell together. Scotty explains that the potential profit from the cocaine business could be extremely huge and proceeds to persuade Avery to join him. Avery is initially reluctant, but eventually agrees to get involved in the illegal business venture. Led by a guilty conscience, Avery decides to return his share of the money back to Romina, that which they had earlier seized from her house. Romina rejects the money, and Avery resolves to handing the money over to the chief of police. Avery explains the situation to the chief, but he dismisses the charges. He refuses to take the money, explaining that he has nothing to do with it, and Avery should deal with his own problem. In an attempt to seek justice, Officer Avery manages to record a conversation with Scotty, as Scotty instructs him to illegally remove cocaine from the evidence locker. Avery proceeds to present the recording to the district attorney, and in return, he asks to be made an assistant district attorney. Initially, the district attorney argues that his request is impossible, but he reluctantly agrees. Now an assistant district attorney, Avery testifies against Officer DeLuca and Scotty and assists in the legal proceedings against them. DeLuca and Scotty are arrested, and once again Avery is recognized for his heroic act. 15 years later down the line, Avery is running for Attorney General of New York. His son AJ is all grown up but appears to have a distant and strained relationship with Avery. AJ has grown into a rebellious and drug-using teenager, while his father does not appear to have a close connection with him. Avery separated from his wife Jennifer, who has been living with his son AJ until Avery agrees to take AJ into his home. AJ moves in with his father and transfers to a local school. Sometime later in the school cafeteria, AJ befriends a boy sighted alone named Jason, but none of them know that Jason is in fact the son of Luke Lanton, or the history between their fathers. The two boys appear to get along pretty well and begin to hang out often. One night, the two teenagers are arrested for felony drug possession. Avery is called to the station to pick up his son AJ. He recognizes Jason upon learning his name and strictly warns AJ to stay away from him. Avery then uses his position and influence to get Jason's charge dropped from felony to a misdemeanor, and Jason is freed upon paying a fine. In spite of AJ's father warning him to stay away from Jason, the two boys continue to talk at school. One night, Jason attempts to ask Romina about his biological father. Romina appears frustrated with his question and refuses to give him a response. His stepfather, Kofi, eventually tells Jason his birth father's name. Jason seeks the truth and looks up Luke Glanton and discovers about his father's past. He visits Robin's auto repair shop to inquire about Luke, and Robin tells Jason more about his father, including his superior motorbiking skills. Later in the day, AJ persuades Jason to attend a party at his father's house and pressures him to steal some prescription drugs and bring it along to the party. Although reluctant, Jason does as instructed. However, he eventually learns that AJ's father, Avery, was the man who killed his father after spotting a picture of him. In bitterness, Jason confronts AJ, and a fight erupts between the two teenagers during the party. The violent confrontation leaves Jason hospitalized with pent-up anger towards Avery. Upon getting discharged, he buys a handgun and breaks into Avery's house. Initially, Jason finds AJ in the house and assaults him at gunpoint. Avery arrives later, and Jason holds him hostage, forcing him to drive into the woods, intending to kill him. Avery breaks down and pleads with Jason to forgive him. Jason eventually leaves him unharmed but takes his wallet. Inside Avery's wallet, Jason finds some money, alongside a photo of himself as a baby with his parents, which Avery had stolen from the evidence locker. Sometime later, Avery wins his bid for New York's Attorney General and celebrates, with AJ at his side. Meanwhile, Romina receives an envelope from Jason with the old photograph of herself, Luke, and Jason inside. Jason runs away from home and buys himself a motorbike with the money from Avery's wallet. He is seen riding away as he heads to the west to seek a new direction in his life. That's all for today's recap. Thanks for watching.